practice interview line with Reverend Shokai is now open. These private conversations are to discuss anything practice related. Koan students are welcome to discuss their practice, but not present koans. Please raise your hand if you would like to have a practice interview. Please keep your hand raised. Thank you. When I touch you on the shoulder, please follow me.
Please be seated for this evening's talk. Sit comfortably and face towards our teacher, and a moment will open the Gata Opening Sutra. Gata on opening the sutra.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kensei. The teachers asked me to serve as Shuso this Ango, which ends in 2 weeks, next weekend, with Sesshin and the Ango closing ceremony. And tonight they've asked me to give a talk about talks. I've been really enthusiastic about the Lankavatara discourses, and I practiced a lot with that, and I was talking a lot about the talk for a few days here, and then Rinsen offered me the opportunity to talk about the talk, and actually to talk about how to practice with the talk. So I'm grateful for this practice opportunity and to be here with everybody tonight. So I don't know how many people were here on Sunday to hear this particular discourse, but I know a lot of us are regular Wednesday night folks. And are you ever here on a Wednesday night and like there's a talk and you know all the words, like you know what all these words mean individually, and then they get strung together in a way that is like, what is happening here? Like, what is this talk? If you know that sensation, you're probably listening to a Teisho, which is a wisdom teaching. This is given by authorized teachers. So if you're hearing Rinsen and Doan and they're referring to a koan, and they're talking about emptiness and form, a lot of times we're hearing a teisho. And there's different ways we listen to different types of talks, right? That's why I'm describing, there's kind of three kinds of talks that we have at the temple. There's the teisho, and then if you're hearing, the teachers can give a Dharma talk also, or if you're hearing a Shuso or disciple talk, we're giving a Dharma talk. And that is not a wisdom teaching, but it is about the Dharma. And this kind of talk is going right to your heart and your mind. It's more cognitively accessible. Whereas a teisho is a teacher giving you a wisdom teaching directly into your heart and hara. So you're not necessarily meant to cognitively engage a teisho. It's kind of, it can wash through you. And it's not that you don't kind of cognitively engage and you don't have to turn your brain off, but that's not where it's being directed, right? So we are listening more with our hara and our hearts if we're hearing a teisho. And then there's what we heard on Sunday, which is a discourse. So Rinsen Roshi's giving discourses on the Lankavatara Sutra. He's been doing this since March. And this is where he's elucidating the sutra for us. Because, I'll read a little passage in the Lankavatara Sutra, and it seems like, oh, okay, that's fine, it's great. And then he talks about it, and it's like, oh my God, there's so much in there to unpack. And so you have this incredible richness that comes through when the teacher's elucidating for you in a discourse. And so we actually practice with this. We practice with how we listen to talks and how we practice with the talk after we've listened to it. It took me kind of a while to figure this out, because it's the tradition I grew up in. You go and you'd hear some words, and then it was kind of done and you went home. Whereas, when you have somebody, a fully awakened person, feeding you something right into your hara, that's going to go with you, right? So there's practice involved with it. So first I want to talk about how we practice listening to the talk. And I don't want to talk about that too much because our teachers have done some really deep and rich teachings on this. If you're in the Lam Rim class, we've studied this for several months on how to listen to the teachings. And if you're not, there's some very good podcasts that our teachers did in 2022 in the fall. If you look in October of 2022, you'll find some really good podcasts. They're called like Understanding the Daily Liturgy, but the first two parts are about how to listen and how to listen to the teachings. And I just want to pull a few points out of there of things that have been particularly helpful for me. But if you haven't listened to them, I really advise you listen to the whole talk because it's not something that we're really necessarily trained in otherwise. We don't listen in the same way when we're in an academic class necessarily, and we don't listen in the same way in school or, even when we're at like an interesting lecture. This is a practice in listening. So I do advise that if you haven't encountered these teachings in their fullness, that you find these podcasts and listen to them. So one thing that's important when you're going to start listening to a talk and practice is, as we do for every other practice, is to have your intention set. So to set your intention to fully engage your listening for the sake of all beings. And to really actively engage your whole body, mind, and spirit in that practice. Not just for what you're going to get out of it, but for the sake of all beings. And then in the spring in the Lam Rim class, Rinsen Roshi did some really impactful teachings. I think they impacted a lot of people about listening with our intellect, our heart, and our hara. And doing this in a certain way so that we're actually listening from the bottom up rather than the top down, right? So we get in touch with our hara when we're going to listen to a talk. And that's in the same way that we do for Zazen, that we learn in beginning instruction. we just put our mind in that one point in our hara and center ourselves, right? And then from there, moving up to open the heart. So not abandoning the hara at all, but opening the heart to what is the feeling of this talk, this teaching. And then finally adding our intellect on top of that and not replacing either of the other two things. Normally when we encounter talk or teachings, I think we tend to start at the top and go down, and the intellect just takes over, and it tries to put it into some kind of cognitive framework, which is at various stages of development to begin with. But it's very hard then for the heart and the hara to get involved if the intellect is fully taken over. So start at the bottom up. And if this doesn't make sense and you don't know what that really means, Rishi's advice is to stay in touch with your breath off and on throughout the listening then, so that you're starting to develop that practice. But if you just touch in with your breath and focus on that, that helps develop this way of listening from the bottom up. And when we listen this way, I feel like this gives us the opportunity to really merge with the teachings, right? This gives us the chance for our Dharma eye to open up to this, for our Dharma eye to get on board and be listening. And it helps us break down that duality of the speaker, the words, and the listener. So we're part of, it's not even active, that's not even the right word, we've merged with this. And then the last point I want to make about how we practice listening, that's been really important for me, is to learn how to really pay attention when something grabs you and to know what to do with that, right? Sometimes we're listening to talk and all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's irritating, like that, I'm so annoyed hearing that. And for me, there's always something there, right? There's something else for me to work with that's causing that irritation or annoyance. Or you're listening and you feel like, you just feel like something clicks into place. Like you can actually feel your hara, heart, mind come into alignment. And that's important too, to take note of that. And then for me, the other thing is if my teacher actually tells me something, like listen to this, or says something and says, do you understand? Or you must understand this. Like I try to follow that instruction, right? So that is usually that's usually going to be something very key to tune into. And then, so we've practiced listening and we've heard the talk, and then we go out into the community area or home or whatever's next. And how do we practice with that? How do we practice with what we're taking, what's in us from the talk now? So to talk about this, I want to use the Sunday discourse as an example because I've been really working with that right now myself. So if you weren't here on Sunday, we had a discourse on the sutra, a little chunk of it, and it was mostly about the paramitas and how our relationship with the paramitas changes as our stage of practice progresses. And so there were 6 paramitas and 3 stages of practice, and there was a lot of content. And I think some of us were getting a little hungry. But it was very captivating, and so lunch can wait a little bit. And it was for me, this kind of discourse was a really good opportunity to practice in that way of listening with the hara and the heart and the intellect, because kind of 2 things came out of it for me. There was a lot of content which was happening kind of quickly, and my brain couldn't actually put it into a framework in real time that quickly. There was too much for my capacity. And then there were parts of that talk that I could feel having an effect on me. I could feel that in my hara and in my heart and washing through. So there's there were both of these things happening in this discourse for me. And then how I've been practicing with that. So there's integration, right? We need to integrate what we've encountered. And I think for me that kind of takes place in 3 main ways. One is in having suitable conversation with my noble friends. We can talk about the talk on Sunday at lunch. That's a great way to, and if you're shy, it's a great way to start a conversation. What did you think of the talk? And then a lot of times, my husband's also a practitioner, so we'll talk about the talk. We'll go for a walk or have dinner and talk about the talk later in the day. And then in this case, I had some conversation with my noble friends Shokai and Kaishin. And that's very good practice, right? To have conversation about the talk. What helps me more with integration, I think, is actually sleeping and moving. So for me, a lot of integration happens in sleep, and so actually taking a nap after a talk is always a very nice thing to do, I think, like for real. And also, I think it's a practice. I learned it from Rinsen. And then going for a walk, I learned at sesshin, because we have we'll have the talk at sesshin, and then we go for extended kinhin, which is 45 minutes of walking. And if you've ever engaged this practice where you've listened to the talk and then gone for a walk, I think you probably experienced the same thing, where you can actually feel this sinking into your marrow while you're walking. So I think that's a very powerful practice for integration. And of course, continuing to sit zazen. That's obvious. And then there's the part about the content. Like, how am I going to deal with all this content that I actually wanted to be able to retain, because I felt like I have enough of a cognitive framework, I have somewhere to put it. Sometimes you don't have anywhere to even put it, and so it just washes through and it'll come back, no worries. So in this case, I actually opened the book and I read the text again. And I'm seriously, I would have normally read through this text and that's great, and moved on. And because I'd heard the talk once already, I could read the text in a much different way. So instead of just underlining everything, I had some key points. And then I actually listened to this talk again, because there were some points in there that I really needed to touch back in with. And I took some notes. And we've had, I don't know how many discourses on the sutra. I want to say it's up to 25 or 26 now. And we actually have a team of people who are working. Some of our distance members are organizing the YouTube talks, and the Lankavatara will all be in one playlist for us, so we can go back and do this easily. And especially thank you to Claire. She is spearheading that, and it's going to be a lovely resource for us eventually. Now, I don't always go back and listen to the talk, right? Again, because, one thing, time, and just also, it's not always the best choice. So you have to think about, why would you want to do this, right? When is a good time to listen to the talk again? In this case, it was really clear to me because there were specific content pieces I needed to just hear again and get some notes on and make a little chart and feel better. But really, I think it comes down to me about, what's left after the talk, right? What's sort of the smell and taste that you have, right? So sometimes you hear a talk and there's you can almost taste it, but you can't quite. But there's this really strong smell of it. Does this make sense? So if I had that sensation of I can almost taste it, I might listen to it again. And I might do that as I'm falling asleep or on a walk, sort of in this integration way of seeing if the taste actually arises. Now, when not to keep listening to the talk is when there's something in there that or for me, that I can get caught into, I really need to understand this. What does this mean? And we just have to be comfortable not knowing. You could listen to the talk 8 times, and this is a very specific example for me. When I first came to the temple in 2017, I heard a teisho about Nansen kills the cat. And I just had to know, why did he kill the cat? And there was no way for me to know this. But I didn't know that. And so I got really, for a few weeks, just obsessed about it. And that's so not helpful. So No stress, no obsessing. And the other time that I don't think it's helpful to listen to a talk is when it's hit you so hard and it's hit your every fiber of your being, it almost hurts how much you hear this and feel this. And speaking of the taste, that's so delicious. And so just to let that soak in and do its work, it's already doing its work. Like listening again isn't the thing, it's there already. So just enjoying that. I think it's important to give ourselves grace around this. We are so blessed to have such amazing teachers who give us just so many opportunities for teaching. And I was talking with another practitioner today about how sometimes we're here and we're listening to the talk and we're really engaged and we're paying attention and it's all like, oh yeah, this is like all making sense. And then we get up and we do our bows and we walk out and it's like, I don't even know what that was anymore. It just like feels like where did that go? And I think that's where it comes, the trust in our practice comes in, and we have to just trust that didn't all leak out, that the seeds are there, and in some moment that'll ripen. And so just to enjoy that too, and be graceful, give ourselves grace around it. Because it's Ango and we're studying the 5 hindrances, I do want to just say a few words about how the hindrances can come up in this practice of listening and integrating and practicing with talks. I'm sure we don't have to tell anybody, but had the experience of daydreaming at some point in a talk or thinking about what we need to do this afternoon, or how we're tired and wish we were in bed. And with that, it's just practicing like we do in Zazen. You just see that, acknowledge it, and let it go. That hindrance of restlessness, connect back in with our bodies, remember our intentions, reset the intention, come back into our practice of listening. I think we've all had the experience probably of the hindrance of doubt arising about a talk. Maybe I think I already know this, or I can't possibly understand it. And then that can pretty quickly escalate into, oh, I'm a terrible Zen student, and I don't sit enough, and what is happening with my practice? And now we're not engaging the talk at all. And that's just this, again, it's really the same practice with the hindrances in terms of listening to a talk as it is in Zazen or your daily life. It's the hindrance is the hindrance, and seeing it and being mindful of it is key to abandoning it. So examining our motivation. And again, that grace piece comes in. We don't have to follow that story of doubt. We don't have to give consent to the doubt occupying our mind. And then you have the aversion and the desire, the things that I should be doing. This often results in sloth. Maybe, I don't feel like engaging the teachings or listening. I think Kinhin is actually very helpful here. I mean, it's its own meditation practice, and also getting up and moving before the talk is very helpful. You can feel the energy kind of come up in the room. I think there's a reason we have Kinhin before the talk. But also just remembering our motivation. Again, this precious opportunity to be here alive and well enough to have a chance to listen to the Dharma and to listen to our teachers and to have a chance to practice this way. So hindrances, always working with them in all contexts. I think in closing, I just want to reemphasize how important it is to fully listen from the hara, the heart, and the intellect with the Dharma eye, and then just giving ourselves the warm-hearted space to integrate. and to not obsess about even the integration, because seeds of integration have been planted. It's going to happen, and just trusting that process. We don't have to know. Like, we're not here to know. We should enjoy it and talk about the talks, enjoy each other, enjoy sharing what we've encountered and hearing what each other has encountered, with no stress and no obsession.
To